Okay. I guess I am going to try my best to get used to recording this and talking to a camera while I put away my microphone, because I was originally going to use these and my webcam, but the webcam sucks, so I'm using my Canon. Yeah. Okay, it is 1:55 a.m., which is a great time to be making a personal video. What do you do? What did you stay up all night doing, Jay? Oh no, I was making an EX-JW video, because I'm an EX-JW. And I don't know what to do with myself otherwise at this present moment. I should, I'm gonna drop my webcam. I should be working on commissions, but I'm not doing that because I've been procrastinating doing this video. Now I'm procrastinating doing commissions, so I'm doing the video. Question is, what am I going to procrastinate on in order to do the commissions? I guess we'll find out. I'll put that up later. I am stalling because I am kind of nervous. Yeah, I have no idea how to start this, so I'm just gonna introduce myself. I'm Jay. You can call me either that or your fungi overlord. I'm not kidding. Anyway, so yeah, I was born a Jehovah's Witness and faded out about 6 years ago when I was 22-ish. I'm from Texas, and this is my story. I do want to preface this by saying I don't intend for my channel to become a solely EX-JW channel, though I will be making more videos on it because this is a very broad subject and it's impacted a lot of my life. And just everything will not fit in this video, so it'll end up like 5 hours long. I do want to focus on my art and writing and produce videos regarding those subjects. And well, I've been recently watching a lot of other EX-JW videos and channels, and I want to voice my story. I know people need to hear more stories like this and experiences, and if this video helps somebody, just one person, then I'm not gonna stay silent anymore. Anyway, since I am an artist slash storyteller and working on my first series, I'm going to have a time-lapse of me working on stuff relating to that in the background to keep within the art aspect of my channel. And shamelessly plug my stuff. And growing up as a Jehovah's Witness was a lot of inspiration for this story, so it kind of all ties together anyway. I also never really intended to show my face on this channel, or like maybe at least do a face reveal later on, but I know the branch monitors for these kind of videos and I want them to see my face. There is nothing else this organization can take from me, and I'm done feeling like I have to hide myself and feel embarrassed about this part of my life. I thought I heard somebody. If any of my family sees this, I'm about to reveal a lot of things about myself and my life that you don't know or may not want to hear. I've only recently had the strength to talk about these things openly to a handful of my friends, and truthfully, even they only know bits and pieces of what I'm about to reveal, so be warned. It's about to get very dark in here. And I do want to add that I don't hate my parents for raising me this way. There definitely is some resentment, but I know the reasons they did so was out of concern and love for me and my brother. They thought that the Jehovah's Witness organization was a safe place to raise us, and were given false promise after false promise, and were lied to. So while there is inevitably some responsibility over this on their part, the bulk of my anger is directed towards the governing body and the organization, not other witnesses or ex-witnesses who are also victims. And this is where I will put a trigger warning for anyone who needs it. Yay! Trigger warnings. My story involves topics of severe depression and anxiety, mental and emotional abuse and neglect, and suicidal thoughts and ideations. So, I also have ADHD, so fair warning, there is a 95.6% chance I will go off topic and continue to stutter. I have my script here, this is why I keep looking over. Hence the script. So I guess first is family backstory. I was a third generation Jehovah's Witness, me and my brother. My grandparents on our father's side were Jehovah's Witness, then my dad brought my mom in, and then my brother and me were raised in it. We live in the area my father grew up in, so there were members in our congregation that were aware of like us and knew my grandparents and all, though they died when I was very young, so my brother and I don't really know them or never got to know them. And we don't talk to that side of the family like at all anymore, so that's a whole other story. So my mom met my dad, and then they had me, and they regret it now. Not really. So my mom met my dad, and she was very opposed to Jehovah's Witness stuff at first. She studied for 3 years before she decided it was the truth, and got baptized when I was very little. Like, I vaguely remember it. Her family, of course, was opposed to it, and my grandmother tried to talk her out of it. But despite all that, we ended up being the only Jehovah's Witnesses in both sides of the family, pretty much. Because my dad's side of the family wasn't in it anymore. I think some of them might have been Pomi, physically out, mentally in, but I'm not sure. And I mean, like I said, we don't talk to them. I don't really know a whole lot in the history on that side, so yay. And we were still fairly close with my mom's side of the family, but there was always that wall between us, you know, just no holidays, no birthdays. They never knew, like, what we could and couldn't do, what we, you know, just always a wall. But yeah, the earliest memories I have are of... Hang on, my dog's wanting in the room. Come on. Welcome back. Welcome back. Come here. Say hi, Nora.
Hi! Hi everybody, this is Nora. I love her.
Okay. Where was I? Oh yeah, okay. But yeah, the earliest memories I have are of being in the Kingdom Hall, going to circuit assemblies, conventions, memorials, going out in service, going to Bible study, going camping with a group of brothers and sisters because we live in a fairly rural area. Both me and my brother grew up thinking that we were gonna be in a paradise soon and our family and friends would live forever and we would talk about what kind of animals we would have as a pet in the new system, where and in what kind of houses we would live in, where in the world we would go, what we would do with eternal life. We fully believed it, and because it had been crammed into our brains from birth. And I mean that, like, literally. My mom said she would read to us the Listening to the Great Teacher book as toddlers, and she would probably say how I would pick it out for her to read for, like, a bedtime story. I don't remember why, other than the fact that it was bright freaking pink. I don't even remember what was in it. I had to look up what it was called while I was gathering, like, there went my brain. I had to look up what it was even called, before making this, so yeah. The earthly paradise and resurrection was as real to us as anything. Like, this cup I'm holding, it was real to us. So, as I got older, I started going to school, public school, and I was the only witness kid in my grade. There was one other who was a few grades ahead of me, and he was an elder's son. And then eventually my brother started going, so there were 3 witness kids in this school, like, all together. Which is, I don't know how common that is, but for the area I was in, it's like a smaller suburb outside of a larger city, so maybe that's why. I don't know. School was very interesting for me. I really loved it, but I also hated it. And I didn't understand why until I started waking up a few years ago. I loved going to school because I enjoyed being around other kids my age, and that wasn't something I had in the congregation. Any other kids were either a few years older or younger, or they were boys, and that's kind of a... I don't think it's, like, really taboo for young girls and boys to be playing together in the congregation, but at the same time, it wasn't very common, even though I was more interested in playing with the boys, but that's neither here nor there. Anyway, but yeah, any other kids either were out of my age group or didn't really want anything to do with me anyway. And I didn't understand why at the time, but there was definitely a line between who had money and who didn't in the congregation. At least in mine, growing up. And my family didn't have money. My dad was injured at work while I was cooking in the womb. Had to have metal rods put in his spine, ended up disabled. My earliest memories of him are of him in a hospital bed in our house. And eventually he got a morphine pump and all, and was able to move around a lot more and stuff, but back to the point, yeah, we lived off social security checks and food stamps because he couldn't work. My mom couldn't work because she then had 2 babies to care for on top of a newly disabled husband. And yeah, my brother was born the year after me, so 2 babies in diapers at the same time and a disabled husband. I don't know how she made it through. So yeah, not only were we poor, but my dad had been disfellowshipped and reinstated before I was born. And that stuff still sticks around even if you get reinstated. And yeah, so my brother and I basically had potentially problematic written on our foreheads because of our family history, which includes the other relatives on my dad's side, though I don't really know any details. Like I said, we don't talk to them, but judging from their character, yeah, well, me and my brother did kind of get into fist fights on the stage a few times in the hall, so I won all of them. So I found it very difficult to befriend any other Jehovah's Witness kids. And none of us had anything in common regardless to even spark a friendship to begin with. My brother and I grew up running around outside, fighting each other with sticks and rocks and sliding around in the mud, and that definitely wasn't something they thought would be fun. So no friends in the Kingdom Hall. I get to school, and I am told I can't trust any worldly people around me, and basically that I'm not allowed to befriend anyone there. And that's why I also hated school. Not only was I an outcast in the congregation, but I was also an outcast in school. Because I was the weird JW kid who couldn't celebrate birthdays, couldn't do anything holiday related, or say the Pledge of Allegiance, which honestly, that I'm grateful for that one because that's indoctrination in its own right, and I actually have a story about that for another time. So yeah, every Valentine's Day kids would make, those little bags or boxes or whatever to receive their candies and notes and stuff in, and I very distinctly remember one year, I think it was 2nd grade, everyone had their boxes, and because the other kids' parents weren't aware of a Jehovah's Witness kid in class, all of the things that were meant for me had to be piled up on a counter. Yeah, it's kind of humiliating as a child, being directly excluded and brought attention to like that. And yeah, I went and got it all because the teacher didn't want it on the counter, and then I hid it in my bag because I wanted the candy. And I still felt guilty for keeping it. I wasn't supposed to accept it. Like, I should have thrown it in the trash. My battery's about to die. I wasn't supposed to accept candy with pink hearts on it on that specific day because it would make Jehovah sad and I could potentially lose my life over candy. And that's just one example I have of many from school. And I gotta recharge my battery now. Okay, my battery is recharged. Let's continue. So I was talking about school, and that's just one example of many stories I have from school. However, I did make friends with this one boy from pretty much day one. I'll call him Yuki because I don't have permission to use his real name. And if he happens to see this, he'll know this is about him. we were both kind of outcasts, and the first day of school and my first time going to recess, he came up to me and asked if I wanted to play NASCAR. And I was like, someone wants to play with me, yay! And then we basically ran around the playground making vroom vroom noises, and I remember it was a lot of fun. We stayed friends up until about, I think I was about 12 or 13. I haven't talked to him in many years because of an incident that I was very confused about for a long time, and now that I'm older, I realize it wasn't malicious like I was led to believe it was. Anyway, the point is, I wasn't entirely alone because I at least had Yuki to play with at recess every day. And, you know, see on school and all. But there was always this weight in my chest because I felt guilty for associating with him, and also because he was worldly, he would eventually die in Armageddon, and if he didn't become a Jehovah's Witness like me. And as a kid, feeling like any minute it's gonna start and people are gonna start dying around you, I'd get anxious thinking about it, imagining it happening while I'm at school one day and having to watch my friend die. So yeah, my depression started very early on. I didn't know why. I couldn't explain what I was feeling, as I didn't have the language or the capability to voice it. Like, I didn't know I was depressed, you know, that's just always been my normal. But I was extremely lonely, and the only person I truly had who I could play with and watch movies and stuff with was my brother, and half the time we were at each other's throats. You know, we were close in age and we had to share a bedroom, and his bipolar disorder was difficult to deal with as a young fungus who didn't fully understand what that meant. On top of parents that didn't know how to deal with it either. So, yeah. 5th grade, I was about 9 or 10. I met someone else, and for some reason we just clicked right off the bat. We'll call her Lorna because that's her name. Anyway, yeah, my parents were right about the bad influence thing, and honestly, she's the absolute worst. Like, she did something to me that to this day I can't get rid of. Like, it still haunts me. She introduced me to anime. And there went my life. Anyway, I think my mom knew how lonely I was because I was allowed to remain her friend. My dad didn't like her, like, at all. She was the Hot Topic kid, and to be honest, our relationship at first was a bit toxic, and it's not anything that was her fault, because due to my upbringing, I was a major people pleaser. That's pretty much a given if you're raised... I'm not sure how other high control organizations are, but definitely if you're raised as a Jehovah's Witness, you're most likely, like, a people pleaser. I didn't know how to say no, and that resulted in letting people walk all over me, even up into my 20s. It's still something I'm mostly, like, kind of out of that, but, you know, sometimes it's hard to work with. But yeah, what I mean is that no matter what, I agreed with her. I thought we had to like all of the same things, and so I would say I enjoyed things that she liked even if I didn't like it, and just I was constantly doing things to, please her. And I don't, yeah, she probably didn't even realize that, like, if she's watches this, like, so yeah, I didn't know how to be an individual person or say no, because as a Jehovah's Witness, you have to believe and do the same thing that the Jehovah's Witness next to you is doing, and so on and so forth. So I also kept trying to find ways to get her into the truth, because I wanted her in paradise with me, and she was an atheist. She was, and still is, stubborn though, so that never happened. We pretty much just had this unspoken agreement that we just wouldn't talk about religion. But anyway, 6th grade, I have a whole group of friends that I loved dearly, and I still do. It was during this time that I learned how much I love writing and drawing and creating characters and stories. We had this game we would play where we created our original characters and we drew them and we pretended them to be them during school, or personified different Inuyasha characters. I was Kilala. We basically LARPed through school. This is also where my love for Japan and Japanese culture sparked. We were the otaku kids that would eat with chopsticks in the cafeteria and Naruto run across the baseball field. And it was the most fun I'd had as a child, and made me love going to school. But it really fucked with my head being told I can't befriend or trust the people that actually seem to want to be my friend, because they're bad influences and will turn me away from the truth. That I can't trust them because they don't actually care about me. But at the same time, the people I'm supposed to trust and who truly love me don't want anything to do with me. And that's where I started developing trust issues. And also just never feeling good enough. Like, I'm only good enough to have worldly friends, but not ones in the truth. I always felt like something was wrong with me. Which, to be honest, that wasn't all because of Jehovah's Witness doctrine, but that's a different topic. My parents were okay with the friend group and me liking anime and stuff to an extent. They weren't as strict as some of the other parents in the congregation, and I think a lot of that had to do with how my mom grew up. She was quite the opposite of a Jehovah's Witness. Like, Woodstock child going backstage with Led Zeppelin opposite. And since my dad was dealing with his disability and stuff, he wasn't really paying attention to what I was doing. So I was able to get away with a lot more than other Jehovah's Witness kids, which I don't know if I would still be here or not if I weren't. But they didn't know about everything. I hid a lot of stuff from them. I would stay up watching Inuyasha and Bleach on Adult Swim, or at the time I'd read manga that I knew I shouldn't be reading, like Chobits, which I probably shouldn't have been reading anyway as a preteen, but whatever. if any manga or anime I was reading or watching had cursing or the typical, like, naked lady scene, I was always terrified of it getting taken away. That actually did happen once, but I found where they hid it. Lorna let me borrow her Gravitation DVDs, and that involved a gay couple. Oh. So yeah, I definitely was not supposed to have that, so I treated that one like it was classified FBI documents. Other kids were hiding drugs or porn from their parents. I was smuggling mostly innocent manga and anime. And even hiding my own drawings and writing. That was totally innocent, but I was scared to death that it was going to get taken away, because you never know, like, what little thing a JW is going to deem, like, pagan or unbiblical or whatever, that, just the tiniest thing. Like, one of my characters from forever ago, the main character of the series I'm currently working on, is like, he has wings and stuff, so I always thought that they would be afraid that he was a demon, which he's not, but, you know, stuff like that. I even had a Shonen Jump magazine that got taken away because it had Naruto holding a kunai knife on the cover, and my dad said it was violent. And then he let my brother watch Starship. And then he let my brother watch Starship Troopers. And then he let my brother watch Starship Troopers, which is rated R, if nobody knows. I didn't want to get in trouble, and I didn't want to lose my friends if my parents found out that they were I didn't want to lose my friends if my I didn't want to lose my friends if my parents found out that they were the source I was getting my anime fix from. When you're raised in a high control organization, you don't actually learn to respect authority figures. You learn to fear them. And the majority of the time, those authorities tend to conflate those two things, or think being submissive out of fear is good and normal. You learn how to read people so you can avoid whatever may set them off. You don't get any experience on how to stand up for yourself. You learn to fear and avoid confrontation, so when it happens, you have no idea how to handle it. So you let people walk all over you, because that's what you're used to, and that's how you've survived. And especially growing up JW, you're taught to be a pacifist, which amplifies all of my above points. You learn how to hide things or suppress parts of yourself. You learn how to listen to footsteps coming down the hall and quickly close out of tabs or hide whatever manga or drawing you currently have, at least in my experience. And I still catch myself doing that to this day. Like, I still have to remind myself that I'm an adult and I am allowed to watch, read, write, and draw whatever the hell I want. But I still get that urge to look over my shoulder. And that's also why I'm recording this in the middle of the night, because my parents are asleep. But yeah, I've had to literally force myself to make my own decisions and not tell my parents everything I'm doing. Like, I signed up for a credit card last year, and I mean, I knew I'd use it responsibly and everything, but I had to force myself not to seek someone else's approval for it. Except for the bank, because I needed their approval to get the card. But yeah, back to my time in school, an incident eventually happened that tore the friend group apart. And it threw me for a loop really bad. Everyone was at each other's throats. I was trying to mediate and keep everything together. And all of this going on just reiterated the you can't trust worldly people thing. So I became very conflicted and confused, or like more confused than I already was. Looking back, while some of it was justified, a lot of it was just petty middle school BS that blew up. But I didn't know what to do about it because I didn't have any other social experience other than,
Good morning. Have you heard the good news today?
and like I said earlier, no understanding or experience of how to deal with conflict. It was such a stressful time that I ended up developing a stomach ulcer and missing so many days of school that they were going to hold me back a year. And I didn't want that. I didn't want to leave my friends. I didn't want to be alone again. My mom decided to start homeschooling me instead, as my brother had started that in 3rd grade due to some stuff that happened with his teachers, but that's his story to tell. But yeah, halfway through 7th grade, I suddenly am no longer going to school. Originally, the plan was to just catch up and re-enroll me the next year, back with my age group and with my friends. And that didn't happen because my depression kept getting worse and worse, and I couldn't catch up. I just got to the point of what doesn't matter. Like, I'm not even supposed to be friends with them to begin with. Like, what's the point? I was still keeping in touch with them online some, back in the MySpace and Gaia Online days, and every now and then Lorna would come by, but she wasn't ever allowed to stay long, and she didn't even really feel comfortable staying anyway because my dad would literally just glare at her. And I remember my parents arguing about my worldly friends. Mom knew I had no other friends but them. Dad didn't want worldly people in the house. Every time I'd have someone over, like the rare occasion that was, I'd have this weird mixture of happiness and guilt and fear of what my dad might do. Then another incident happened with Lorna that really shouldn't have affected me the way it did, but hindsight's 20/20, and as a young teen everything feels worse than it is, I guess because it's new. Anyway, I ghosted her because everything that happened just further cemented that doctrine in my head. You can't trust worldly people. They don't care about you. Only Jehovah's people truly care about you and love you. But also, I had none of Jehovah's people to fall back on because nobody wanted to be friends with the weird fungus in the congregation. And so there I was, at home, all the time, in my room, by myself. I was mostly either in my room or at the Kingdom Hall as far as I can remember. I don't remember much of my life during my teen years because of how severe my depression got. You know, all of a sudden I went from having a group of friends who I adored and socializing, running around outside, and then next thing I was almost completely isolated. I had a lot of complicated and confusing feelings that I just could not put into words. I didn't have the knowledge of how to manage my emotions in a healthy way because you're not taught that growing up as a witness. And it didn't help that both of my parents had no clue how to do that either. And as far as my dad was concerned, throughout my life, me getting upset over something was almost always seen as being disrespectful. And more often than not, my mom would take it personally and also get upset with me. So I started learning how to not feel anything. There were times my aunt would comment about how chill I was, like, especially when we had this, like, really bad storm with a tornado warning, and she was terrified and, like, packing all of her stuff to get away, which she actually just ended up packing all of her hair products in her panic. But, then I'm just sitting there like nothing is happening, and, you know, because I didn't care if a tornado came along and threw us into the next county. I couldn't anymore. That's how numb I was. You learn to fear them. The majority of the time, those authorities tend to conflate the two, thinking they're being submissive. This is why we don't record at 4:23 a.m. I'm probably gonna do it again anyway.